and then we'll try to understand what is positions and interests. So that's what we covered in the last session. We will continue from there now, and we'll start with a little exercise to begin with. It's a fun little thing. Mrinalini, do you want to play the PPT? Or should I do it?
I'll do it, no problem.
Share sound. Share sound, optimize the clip. Please bear with my husky voice.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. So go to the next one and play the video. The one after that.
देखो डॉन की तस्वीर
ये आदमी डॉन है, लेकिन ये तो मैं हूं।
ये डॉन है।
तो क्या आप चाहते हैं कि मैं इसकी जगह आए?
हाँ, और इस तरह तुम हमारी बहुत बड़ी मदद कर सकते हो।
नहीं नहीं डीएसपी साहब, मुझे तो आप माफ कर दीजिए। अभी अभी आप कह रहे थे कि उनके आदमी ने आपके 3 इन्फॉर्मर मार दिए हैं। अजी सूरत शकल मिलने से क्या होता है, वो लोग तो 2 मिनट में पहचान जाएंगे कि देखिए पकड़िए जरा, मैं समझाता हूं। कहां डॉन जो जरा जरा सी बात पे गोली चला देते थे, और कहां मैं, मुझे तो गोलियां तक खेलना नहीं आता।
मैं तुम्हें सब सिखा दूंगा।
अजी सीखने से क्या होता है, उनके आदमियों को तो पता चल ही जाएगा ना।
उन्हें किसी तरह भी पता नहीं चलेगा। देखो ये राज के डॉन मर चुका है, अब मेरे सिवा सिर्फ तुम जानते हो, और ये राज के तुम डॉन नहीं हो, कोई और हो, तुम्हारे सिवा अब सिर्फ मैं जानूंगा। डॉन के साथियों की तरह पुलिस भी तुम्हें डॉन ही समझेगी।
और कहीं मुझे पुलिस वालों ने डॉन समझ के पकड़ लिया तब, मैं तो गया ना 12 के भाव में।
उसके लिए मैं हूं ना। तुम्हारी मदद से पुलिस जब उन लोगों को पकड़ लेगी तो मैं कह दूंगा कि तुम डॉन नहीं हो, तुम मेरे आदमी हो, इन्फॉर्मर हो।
वो सब तो ठीक है डीएसपी साहब, लेकिन मुझे तो आप माफ ही कर दीजिए। तो बड़ा खतरनाक काम मालूम पड़ता है भाई।
कैसे आदमी हो तुम, जरा से खतरे से इतना डरते हो?
पहले नहीं डरता था डीएसपी साहब, पहले की बात और है। पहले मैं अकेला था, तब आपने कहा होता तो मैं झट से तैयार हो जाता है कि जीना मरना क्या, चलो ये काम भी करके देखते हैं। हाँ, लेकिन क्या है डीएसपी साहब, अब मैं अकेला नहीं रहा। यहाँ ये देखिए, अब मेरे पास दीपू हैं, मुन्नी हैं। आपके कहने पर कि बेटा कुएं में कूद जा, मैं तो कूद जाऊं। लेकिन कहीं उन लोगों ने पहचान लिया कि मैं डॉन नहीं कोई और हूं, तो वो तो मेरी टिक्का पोटी करके भेज देंगे। फिर इन बच्चों का क्या होगा? ये बेचारे तो फिर से फुटपाथ पे पहुंच जाएंगे।
लगता है थोड़े ही दिनों में इन बच्चों से बहुत प्यार हो गया तुम्हें।
हाँ साहिब, वो तो है, इनका मेरे सिवा और कौन है। और फिर ये लोग मुझे कितना प्यार करते हैं।
इनके मासूम प्यार के बदले में तुम इन्हें क्या दे रहे हो? सड़कों पे नाचने गाने की तालीम, आवारागर्दी की जिंदगी। तुम चाहो तो ये बच्चे स्कूल जा सकते हैं, पढ़ लिख के डॉक्टर इंजीनियर बन सकते हैं।
लेकिन कैसे?
मैं इन्हें सब कुछ दूंगा जो इन्हें चाहिए। मैं इन्हें हॉस्टल में दाखिल करा दूंगा, किसी अच्छे स्कूल में पढ़ाऊंगा मैं इन्हें।
अगर मैं आपका ये काम कर दूं?
देखो, डॉन या डॉन के साथियों से मेरी कोई जाति दुश्मनी नहीं है, लेकिन इन लोगों के जुर्म समाज के जिस्म पे ऐसे ही नासूर हैं जैसे इन बच्चों के गरीबी। तुम इन लोगों के जुर्म मिटाने में मेरी मदद करो, मैं इनकी बदनसीबी मिटाने में तुम्हारी मदद करूंगा। बोलो, मंजूर है?
ठीक।
Nalini, stop, and you can put the participants on the screen. Okay. I want to know from you that was a negotiation between 2 people. Did you figure what were the positions and what were the interests that the parties had?
The position was that he is not willing to become Don, pretend to be Don. And his interest was that somebody has to look after those abandoned children now who he is sheltering. And his negotiation is if somebody takes care of their needs, basic needs, or take care of them, then he is willing to consider being the Don.
Okay. Fine. Anyone else?
Madam, the police inspector who was there, his perspective,
His perspective, yes.
so his position was that he wants Amitabh Bachchan to play the part of Don. So that was his position, and his interest was catching hold of the real Don, and for that he was giving an offer to Don, to that Amitabh Bachchan, saying that he very nicely negotiated with Amitabh Bachchan, saying that what was the purpose, why is he denying, why does he not want to do so? That was an open-ended question that he asked, and with that open-ended question he got to know that this fellow is worried more about the future of the two children that he's adopted. Before that he had no such interest, but now that he has these two children to take care of, he will probably be very careful about making a rash choice. He's now scared for his own life. Before that he was not scared for his own self. So he was able to get Amitabh Bachchan from his position to his interest. He got to know that, and then with that he made an offer. So that is the way the inspector played his role.
Right. Right. Anyone else? Any more comments?
I guess the interest for both of them was same. Both of them wanted to have the the cancer of this Don affecting the society at large and affecting the lives of the children eradicated, but both in different ways.
Yes. So very nice point. All of you have brought out. First of all, you all have identified the positions. Generally, if you would just stick to that, there's no way ahead. But what happened there is they explored what are the fears or what are the interests of each one. They came to a place where they found a common goal to eradicate a social evil. The reason for that common goal were two different things. Amitabh Bachchan was looking for the security of the kids, and the DSP was looking at it as a part of his job and as healing the entire society. But they both had the common goal. But there were fears which needed to be addressed, which were also interests. So then going back to that, and then satisfying the basic need of security for the children that he has adopted, for recognition, for security, for giving them a certain status. That was the basic need that was pointed out by the DSP, and that's how the negotiation was closed. So it's filmy, but there is a lot of layers to that conversation. And yeah, so that's what we wanted to explore with this little exercise and kind of begin on that note. And yeah, we can.
Yeah, may I say something?
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, from coming from position to interest and interest to basic need, there were many layers. First,
Yes.
he thought it was not possible. Then he thought I cannot do it. Then he thought something. So every layer was gradually peeled away, and then the position and interest, and then the need came up.
Yes. So that onion
Onion.
was beautifully shown in this conversation.
Conversation.
Thank you. So then, so what we saw here was principled negotiation. It's a way of dealing with negotiation from a cooperative and interest-based perspective. There are 4 fundamental principles of principled negotiations. Separate people from problems. Focus on interests and not positions. Generate options for mutual benefit. And use objective criteria. We will look at all these in the following slides. Yes. Ronald.
Thank you, Ganda. I mean, in spite of your bad throat, you're still continuing. That just shows your commitment. Okay, let me just come in here. First principle, negotiation principle, separate people from the problem. Let me give you an example. Maybe I did talk about it. 2 neighbors fighting. Problem: the dog bit the child. How does the communication happen? You are an irresponsible parent. You don't know how to look after your child. The other one retorts, you don't know how to keep a dog. You should keep him locked. Why do you keep him open? And this is how the conversation or communication continues. You are a bad parent. You are a bad, you don't know how to keep your pet. The problem is obscured. Problem is how to ensure that the child remains safe and the dog remains within his limits. And this is exactly what happens in most of the cases when parties are in conflict. The argument or the conversation moves from person to person. He spoilt my life. You are an irresponsible doctor. You don't know how to deal with patients. Look at how your hospital treats us. We pay for our services and this is how we get treated. And result being that we do not get into a problem solving mode as to how to ensure that the problem doesn't recur or the problem is resolved. We concentrate more on who's the party on the other side. And the result being, we never find a solution because people anyway, so far as human beings are concerned, as I told you, they are full of emotions. And rational thinking gets snapped. Scarf example. The moment there is a threat to any one of the domains, your thinking snaps. So what we need to do is shift the focus. And how do we do that? Be hard on the problem, not on the people. Whenever such kind of talk happens, we shift to what is the issue at hand. Let me understand what is troubling you. Let me see, therefore, again, we come back to the same questions. Shift parties from blame game to the real issue. And the real issue can happen only by your questioning skills. A little bit of venting is important. Let that venting happen. But if venting goes beyond control, you need to shift, come in and tell parties, look, if I've understood you correctly, well, your dog bit the child. Let's see how we can resolve this issue. Let's see what is the problem with the child. how we can ensure that these kind of things don't get repeated in future, so that you keep shifting the focus from the person to the real problem. That is why, if you see the second one, disengage the people from the people problem from the substantive problem. I don't like your face. You are the one who spoiled my life. What are the issues? Nobody talks about when they come on the negotiating table, because they are in a conflict situation. They can't think beyond their emotions. That emotional layer is the one which we need to remove. And that's where we need empathy. We need questioning skills. And my questions that I told you, what is the trouble? What are the issues? What is troubling you? Focus on interest, not on positions. What people say, you are a bad person. But what happened, ma'am? Let me understand what happened. What happened? What transpired on that day? And further clarificatory question, follow the funnel approach. And once you have come to the conclusion, once the interests are on the table, we set the agenda and then start working on the options. Possible way to resolve the problem. Those are your options. So focus on interests, not on positions. Separate the means from the end. A fundamental objective is the long-term, larger goal that you aspire. It could come via different means, which could also be an objective. Now, these are words. Now, let me tell you, how do we do that? How do we separate people from the problem? In our mediation center, we have a board. There's a whiteboard on one of the walls. So as the conversation moves, let's say we have identified the issues, we put those issues on the board. Well, we need to work on safety of the child. We need to work on how the dog, can be put in within its bounds. The door needs to be locked. The dog needs to be on the leash. So we can work and hedge, or maybe the boundary between the two houses, the hedge needs to be, or the fence needs to be, the height needs to be raised. These are various things that, options which we need to work on. So what we do, we put them on the wall. And then you see if I have the two people sitting across the table, right? So the wall is behind one of the people. So the person across can see the board and see what is written, while the man sitting on that, whose back is to the wall, cannot see the board. So he will crane his head or turn around his chair to look at the wall. So what do we tell that person? Sir or ma'am, would you mind if you come on this side, because you will be able to see the board clearly? What have we done technically? We have put the people on the same side to look at the problem, so they don't look at each other. How does person and problem get mixed up? The more they look at each other, the more they get angry. So I may have made them sit on the same side and look at the problem on the wall. And so, okay, look, now let's talk about the problem. Let's talk about this issue. Let's talk about this issue. They are sitting on the same side, but what are they doing? They are actually now concentrating on the problem. Problem is on the wall. This is the practical way of asking people not to look at the problem, not to look at the person, but to look at the problem. What do we mean by saying be hard on the problem? Let's actually look at the problem and resolve the problem. Instead of getting lost in, you are an irresponsible parent, you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to keep the dog. So shift the focus from the person, so that persons they are not looking at each other, they are both looking at the problem. So this is the practical way we found how to remove the person from the problem. And without the people realizing, they will never sit on the same side of the table. Because the moment they come into the room, they assume they are adversaries. And you have shifted the focus. Let's see the next one. Now, principal negotiation is the ideal strategy that focuses on the interest, looks at dispute holistically. So that questioning skills will bring that. It focuses on creating value in the resolution of a dispute. I told you creation of value is finding several options where those options can bring about a trade-off, where parties can exchange, differing interests, different values that they attach to the whole problem, and they can then find a solution which is a common interest. Benefits of principal negotiation: increase efficiency, avoiding of posturing and gamesmanship, because one-upmanship. You see, when that shouting match is happening, then you're trying to outshout each other. You're trying to outsmart each other. You're trying to, call the best bad names that you can call to each other. So that's gamesmanship. Who can outshout the other person? Preservation of relationship. I put the people on the same side of the table, ask them to look at the problem. So actually they are doing problem solving. And higher likelihood of the parties honoring the agreement. If the relationship is good, if the tempers have cooled down, they will look at how to find a solution so that in future, this problem of the dog biting the child does not recur. Let's look at the next one. So the principles are separate people from the problem. We just talked about. Focus on interests, not on positions. Whatever parties demand, whatever parties say, I told you, never take the person on face value. Start asking those questions. What is important to you? Why is that important? Unlayering. Till you come to the real need or the interests of the party. We just talked about that. So never take people on their face value. Start doing it in your real life. You will find you are much happier. Because when people state positions, we start using your own judgment as to what the other person means or wants. So instead of using your own judgment or your own perception or your own, experiences that you have had, why not ask the person? Let me understand what you mean by this. What does it mean to you? What is it that you really is important for you? Why is that important for you? All these questions will ultimately make your communication much better. So focus on interests, not on positions. Generate multiple options for mutual gain. You see, when we start with a single option on the table, if the other party says no to it, where do you go? The communication stops. And parties feel difficult to move on. So, but if you have several options on the table, if parties get stuck on one particular aspect, but whatever you are discussing, you can say, okay, let's park it. We'll come back to this a little later. We don't seem to be moving on this. Let's look at the other option. Will that work for you? How will that work for you? Again, the same question. What is important? Why is that important? And take them through that option. So always have multiple options on the table. Now, how do you generate options? Not an easy job. Yesterday it was, I think one of the questions was, is there a way that people can meet? We did that in our center. 5-6 of us who are regularly mediating, we meet once a week and discuss what was the issue in our case, what were the options given by the parties, and what more options could have been done. That is called brainstorming. So 5-6 of us every time sit down and do brainstorming. What are the options that parties generated? What are the options that can be looked at? So one person will say, one mediator will say, in my case, this was the problem. This is how parties looked at it. And thereafter, we didn't know how to look at it. So therefore, the other four can come out with, well, we could have looked at this option also. So, this generation of options is an art. And it's not easy. It requires thinking outside the box. there are sometimes things which look so obvious that nothing is going to come out of this particular dispute or the way that we are proceeding. What you need to do is take out the unobvious from the obvious. Obvious is no solution seems to be possible. Look at an unobvious, that is a solution which can be taken up. See, sometimes it may look to you that this is impossible. We have had instances where we thought the party's demands were unreasonable. Because obviously you tend to have your own value judgments. But how do you know? For the party, the demand that it's making may be more important than the other things that it's giving up, which you feel is unreasonable. The example of that matrimonial dispute where I told you about a man waiting for the woman. And the woman saying that I'm willing to give up custody, I'm willing to give up maintenance, I'm willing to give up everything, get me divorced. So what will work for the parties? You don't have to at that time judge, because they say, judging impedes creativity. And if you have to be creative while creating options, don't judge them, whether it will work, whether it will not work. And that is called brainstorming. Sit down, think about various options, and this is where reflection becomes very important. After you have done a particular mediation, you have to see what is the process that you used. What were the options that were generated? What worked? How is it that, it's same kind of disputes should not happen in future? All this is part of reflection. And this is going to be now your experience and your wealth of experience, which will help you in the next mediation. And we have seen that. That's where now your shuttle diplomacy comes in. We'll be dealing with one of the ways, aspect of mediation, that is called impasse. Ganda has already told you about it. Parties are already in impasse when they come. But when they get into an impasse situation, sometimes as a facilitator, you're not supposed to give suggestions. So what do? You can say, there was one case before me which was similar, and parties looked at these options. Would you like to consider them? What are you doing? You are indirectly giving them options, but leaving it to them to choose. Not that you are telling them, do it this way. So that power of self-determination is still given to the parties. That is again diplomacy. How you frame. And that's one way we remove impasse. When we see parties are, saturated, they're not coming out with anything. And you feel in some matters, this is how parties did resolve their dispute. So how do you put it? You can't say, do this. So you tell them, look, in that case, parties did this. Would you like to look at it? And there are times when parties do find solutions on that, because actually they are not creative. Mostly parties do rational thinking or logical thinking. And thinking outside the box is lateral thinking. Things which don't seem so obvious, but solutions come out of them. So generate multiple options. That's not the time when you judge options creation. Let all the options come on the table. Whether it will work, whether it not work. Middle class family asking for 2 crores. Or, as I said, a lady now saying, okay, fine, I'm willing to give up all my claims. It can happen. Put that as an option. Just put it on the table. Then, after you have all the options on the table, start working one by one. And that's the only way you will find solutions which parties are willing to accept. Those options can be modified down the line. Okay, not this way, give me this. All those options are open, but put them down. Don't start negotiating with one single option on the table. Evolve objective criteria. When parties get stuck, Ganda talked about endowment effect. When something which belongs to me, I always think that has more value. It's more lucky. And so therefore I give a value which is not the real value. What do we do now? How do we shift? Look at the objective criteria. Let's go to the market. Let's go to the sub-registrar. Let's go to a property broker and find out what is the real value of the property. Now, these examples are simple examples, but you have to keep principles in mind when you sit down to negotiate. When parties get stuck on this is what I want, whether it's a medical dispute, whether it's your supplier dispute, whether it's when you sit with employer dispute, you will have also these kind of disputes in the hospital. There will be dispute between the hospital and the employees. So all these criteria you need to keep in mind when you do negotiation. This is the way it's called. That's why it's called principled negotiation. You don't have to go by my way or the highway. We have to look at something which will resolve the problem. Principled negotiation is about problem solving. And for problem solving, you need these 4 principles. Keep them in mind. Let's go to the next one. Types of problems. People problems. As I said, people are human beings are emotion machines. So the person problems get mixed up with the substantive problem. And the result is there is no rational thinking. And people problems start because of perceptions. I perceive the same thing differently because, they say wherever you are stationed in life, you will have a different perception. Look at 6 and 9. The person standing where you are standing in life. So if a person standing on the left, we'll call it 9. The person standing on your right will call it 6. That's perception. Glass half full. So emotions. I told you every conflict has an outer layer which is full of emotions because we are human beings after all. And communication problem. Because really most people don't know how to communicate. And the biggest casualty is listening. We don't listen. And if we don't listen, we will not shift people from their positions to their interests. Because if you remember listening, rasa, active listening, you have to receive information, you have to acknowledge, you have to summarize and then ask questions. Then only communication is complete. Handle softly. Be hard on the problem, soft on the people. People issues need to be handled softly. You need to let emotions flow. And half the time when they have vented out, they feel that they have really now made their point to the other side, that they will start thinking about the real issue. Because till the venting happens, you will not find them talking about the substantive problem. What are substantive problem? Which are the objective facts or issues which you identify? By again, this is again your listening skills. The first part, open-ended questions, follow-up questions, summarizing. See, all this, unless you're listening, how will you do that? Making short notes, jotting down points. You can't remember so much of information that the parties are giving you, the facts that the party is giving you. So importance of making short notes. Short notes, why? Because your body language, eye contact should not be lost. How will the person know? Remember that child telling the mother that if you are talking to me or listening to me, look at me. That's so important. Empower parties to deal with the problem strongly. Empowering parties. One of the ways that you empower parties is reality testing. We'll deal with that a little later. Which is again an art. Difficult art, but again an art which we need to look at. Next. So separate people from the problem, negotiators, people first. People have strong emotions and difficulty in communicating. Give you that example. Emotions get entangled with the objective merit of the problem. Positions are taken and egos get identified with such positions. And you know, the ego eye is very difficult to deal with. So that's why shifting people from positions becomes important. Small example of I want the orange. Both want the orange. And half doesn't serve the problem. And then there is a fight. Who will take the orange? Till you shift them from their positions to interest. Why questions? What questions? Attack on problem, not on people. Look at the problem. Look at the way how to solve that problem. Deal with that problem. Be soft on people, hard on problem. So this is the separate. We just dealt with all of this. Next. Now focus on interests, not on position. Object of negotiation is to satisfy the underlying interests. I told you positional bargaining is one word we use. Even when parties take positions, solutions can happen. That's the ordinary way of dealing with situations. You know, that's what we always do. You know, I must have Chinese, we must have Indian. No. We had Chinese yesterday. We should have Indian. See, when this kind of talk happens, people enforce their will against the other side. So whoever has the stronger will prevail. No, I am saying so. We must do this way. So the other person succumbs. Solutions happen, but they don't make people happy. So one person will keep sulking. So satisfy underlying interests. Instead, the focus is on the stated position. Mostly we do that. Positions-based negotiation often obscure what you really want. I told you now, when parties are in conflict, that onion layer, layers keep becoming thicker. And positions hide those needs. They will not talk about what they really want, but mujhe chahiye, and they will get stuck to this. Your ego gets identified with your position. That I have said so, I can't now back out. I must get it. So positions-based negotiations often obscure what you really want. Compromising between positions unlikely to produce agreement to effectively take care of the needs that led to adopt such positions. You'll get, as I said, you'll come to a solution, but whoever has a stronger will, more power will prevail. Explore interests, avoid having bottom line. See, sometimes we disclose our bottom line when mostly negotiations are happening. Iske niche nahi jaunga. This is my bottom line. And again, the problem is once you take a bottom line, then tomorrow, even if you get a good deal, you will not be able to shift. That street vendor thing I told you. This is my, 50 rupees. I want to sell the t-shirt. My cost price is 30, ma'am. I can't go below 30. And actually that, the t-shirt is costing 10 rupees. So if you are getting 25, you will not be able to move to 25 because then you will look like a liar. If your cost price is 30, you will not sell it for 25. Then there is no face saving. So don't take bottom lines when you are negotiating. Avoid bottom lines. Let's go to the next. As I told you, generate multiple options. Because the reason why, now this is a beautiful word, there is no right solution to a problem. I always say 3 into 3 is 9. 4 plus 5 is 9. 12 minus 3 is 9. I can reach 9 in so many ways. So there is no single way of reaching 9, na? So why do we look for a single solution to a problem? There's so many ways that problem can be resolved. I gave you that example of the, supplier of goods filing a suit for recovery. Take 50% now, remaining in installments. Take 75% now, and I'm willing to no installments. And the man may say, okay, 75% now I can invest it in the market, and 75, if I get a decree, I don't know whether I'll be able to execute it. 75, if I invest in the market or in a fixed deposit or any kind of an investment, I'll be able to make much more money and recover my losses. Or future supplies and deduct money from each supply in future. See, there are so many ways you can reach a solution. So why do you look for a single solution? Find solutions which meet the differing interests of the parties. There are common interests. There are differing but complementary interests, like the man who wants to play a tennis match. We have differing interests, both want to win, but complementing interests because both want to play the match. So there can be common interests, there can be differing interests, but complementary interests. Those differing interests can be complementary. Those differing interests can be used to trade off. So therefore, you need to identify those interests. Find solutions which meet the differing interest of all parties. Develop multiple options to choose from. Single option, you will get stuck. Have different options on the table so that you can say, fine, let's not look at this. Let's look at something else. What are the probable solutions? Are suggested, now see, this is reality testing. Are suggested solutions achievable? But all that will happen later. Are there any other options? Always ask parties, is there any other way we think? So once they say, okay, we can do this, don't stop at that. Can you think of any other way? Is there any other way of doing this? Why will this option not work? When some options are given, you will find parties say, nahi, ye nahi ho sakta. Ask that party, help me understand, why will this not work for you? So he will reveal another interest of his, why it will not work for him. I told you earlier, I think Ganda has also talked about role reversal. Put yourself into the shoes of the other side. Would you accept this offer? If not, why not? Parties have never thought like this. You need to use these questioning skills to, make parties think. Why should the other people accept this option? Role reversal. Why should they accept this offer that you're giving? If you were in their position, will not accept it. Think outside the box. That's again reality testing. We'll talk about that thing outside the box. Because that's a very, very good way of looking at things. That you did that 9 dots. We did that, right, Ganda? We did that 9 dots, right? That's literally thinking outside the box. That problem really tells you that how you go outside the box to find solutions. And sometimes it's good to, most of us really don't want to do that, but go on the net. You'll sometimes find these reality testing questions which open up your mind to so many ideas. There's no end to learning. That brainstorming is about thinking outside the box. A solution, as I said, don't judge it at that time, but you can create all kinds of solutions and put them on the table. Think outside the box. You will come out with creative solutions. Let's see the next. Evolve objective criteria. agreement must reflect some fair standard independent of mere will of the other side. Merely because I'm saying so will not do. Because if I say so, the other side will never accept. Therefore, don't depend on the will of the parties. Look at what? Market value. Look at expert opinion. Look at what the custom says. Look at what the law says. You see, I may say, look, I'm entitled to this much of maintenance. The wife may have that particular thing in mind. Have you seen the law on the subject? Have you discussed it with your lawyer? Did the lawyer tell you if this is his income as to how much a wife would be entitled to? All these are empowering questions. So that, you see, because most of the problem, see, my most problem is, as I told you when we talked about even Cryolac, the first stage is preparation stage. We don't prepare ourselves. We don't discuss these things with our lawyers. We don't discuss amongst us in the same team as to what is a good offer, what will be a bad offer, what we should accept, what we should not accept. These discussions don't happen. What the other party is going to give us. What do we expect the other party to give us? We don't discuss this question. And those are preparatory questions. We need to, like going to buy a refrigerator. Should you not look at, which is the season to buy? Should you not look at which model to buy? Should you not go to the, Google and find out what is the, the remarks or what do people say about that? People usually go to see what are the comments people give on that particular, good comments, bad comments. You will find all that available. Should you not do that study before you really go to buy a refrigerator? All this is about preparation. You need to prepare before you sit down to negotiate. Even in now let's go to your medical issues. Whenever something like this, a patient dispute has arisen relating to negligence or relating to wrong medicine being given or anything, should you not look at the background of what the dispute was? What was the medicine given? What is the background of the person which he is coming from? Is he actually a cantankerous person? He's used to doing this to every hospital. Look at you must prepare yourself. Is he a hard bargainer? Is he a soft bargainer? How to deal with? Is there somebody else who can influence this person? Is there a third party who will be involved in this? Does he go to a doctor regularly? Some people trust their regular doctors. And if the regular person tells him, look, what you were given was wrong. So he really doesn't know himself. He's relying on somebody else's opinion. So you have to see from where he's coming. All that is part of your preparation. So you need to check on the market value, expert opinion, custom law. By discussing such criteria, neither party needs to give in to the other, not to the will of the other person. Both can agree to a fair solution. Not what I ask, not what you want to give, but what is the market value? What does the custom say? What is the evaluation done by a valuer or an expert? So we'll go on that. Then yield to principle, not to pressure. Don't give in to the pressure of the other side because he's more powerful or because he's more cantankerous. And sometimes we agree to certain things. We just want to get rid of that situation, thinking this is the last time. But remember this, when you keep saying that this is the last time, the man will come back for more concessions. At the last moment, when you give in to, okay, fine, a man says, look, I'm willing to settle for, I want this, and you say, fine. You feel it is a little unfair, but you say, let me end this problem, let me agree to this. He'll come up with another condition. So you keep yielding to pressure, the other side will keep taking advantage of that situation. So always go by a principled negotiation. Never, never, never yield to pressure. Find out positions, interests, all these four things that we just now talked about. They are the basics. 7 things which you told you have to consider in every negotiation. How to do principled negotiation, the 4 criteria we just not talked about. Yes.
Dr. Sunu has a
Yeah.
question.
I just wanted to ask, is this evolve, the fourth thing, evolve objective criteria, same as doing a reality check? Is it the same thing?
Reality check is a little different. I'll talk, it's a very,
Yeah.
reality check is
Thank
more tricky. It
Okay.
borders on the same line, but objective criteria is still easy to do. Let's go to the market, find out. Let's go to a
Okay.
valuer. Let's go to the property broker. But when we talk about reality testing, we'll deal with that chapter a little later, just a little later.
So may I add something here?
Yes. Yes, Karan.
I will give an example of one of the cases where I think it falls into this objective criteria. There was once a case that I mediated. It was between two pharmaceutical companies. It was an export from India, and the import was happening in US. And both parties were very clear about the criteria that they had agreed upon. When it was dispatched from India, it met the criteria that was given. But when it reached the US, it was rejected. And both parties were clear that one said that it's meeting the specifications, so I should be paid. And I've done my bit in terms of the timeline, the quantity, and all the delivery criteria. The other side, the people in the US said, no, it's not meeting in terms of the approval from the lab that they were looking for. So it was tricky because they were completely stuck on their positions and no way they were moving, because they thought that the gentleman in India thought that the US counterpart was basically backing out from his part of the agreement. And the US person thought that he was being given a substandard product, and there was breach of contract because of the lab reports that each individual had. So what we did is we chose a third investigation, a lab, which would do the same reports from another country, and sent a sample from both the countries to this third lab. The samples came up with the same report, and we found out that the acceptable limits of a certain ingredient are more in the US as against in India. Are less in the US as against India. And therefore, it's not it's not an integrity issue or a commitment issue. It's an issue of something that should have been agreed prior. So instead of saying that it should meet certain criteria, it should have been that it should have been such and such ingredients up to this level. So there was a problem in the way that was defined rather than the intentions of the parties. And once that was resolved, because this is a long-term relationship, once that was resolved, the parties found a lot of options in terms of how to resolve it. Because the material was returned back to India, that could be exported to other countries or used elsewhere. And a fresh set of material could be sent to the US. And whatever was the shipping costs and all that was absorbed by both parties. That's because absorbed by both. That's because the relationship mattered, and that judgment that both parties had made that there's no cooperation from the other, that was resolved. So that's a very simple example of how we used objective criteria, where a third party independent investigative person was used to find the answer to the problem that parties were stuck at. And reality testing is slightly different, which we'll come to next. That's it, Chip.
Okay. One important aspect in a negotiation is BATNA. You know, when we said in one program that, you know, what is Batna? They said, baant do. But Batna in negotiation terms is best alternative to negotiated agreement. Now, how do you test Batna? This is an alternative that you have, for which you don't need the other side. You don't need the other side's approval, or you don't need the other side's involvement or their agreement. Because this alternative is away from the table. It's not on the table. Now, let me give you an example. If the buyer wants to sell a good, he goes and you know, he wants to buy goods, and he goes to a supplier, and the supplier quotes a value which the buyer doesn't agree to. So what is the alternative for the buyer? Anyone? The buyer goes to a supplier for purchase of goods. The price quoted by the supplier does not suit the buyer. So what is the alternative for him?
Go to another
Go to
person.
another supplier.
Or bargain with the same supplier for a lesser price.
Yes, but let's say he doesn't agree. So my partner, my alternative, the better alternative, which I don't need the other side's consent or other side's agreement, is to look for another supplier. This is called walk away alternative. Now, there's another way. You can make the opponent agree to what you want, to respect your interests. One is what you want is positions. And once you have disclosed what your interests are and the other person is not willing to accept your interests, what do? Labor management dispute. Management does not accept labor's demand. What does the labor do?
Goes on strike.
Goes on strike. This is called interactive alternative, where I can pressurize the other side into looking into my interests. And the third, we bring a third party into the picture to resolve the dispute, which is a third party alternative. We can either go to the boss, employer-employee dispute. We can go to the court. We can go to arbitration. So therefore, these are third party alternatives. A mother-son dispute. Clean your room. Your clothes should be in the bin. They should not be, your socks and shoes should not be lying around in the drawing room. Everyday problem. Now, what is the alternative for the mother? We have mothers here.
Get the father in.
Let the socks be and let him get out of stock. Then he'll not have socks for a day or two, and then he'll agree.
But that's true. But what you crib, people come into the house, they see a dirty room, drawing room, the socks and shoes all over the place. What do you do? I mean, it may teach the son a lesson or may not, but of course it puts you into a conflict situation. So what is the alternative for you?
You do it yourself.
Do it yourself. But it comes at a cost to your time and even to the relationship.
Yeah.
Let me say I go to my boss for a raise in salary. I tell the boss, I want raise, I can't do in this salary, and I want a raise in my salary. And the boss says, well, look, we've not given any raise to anybody else. We are going through a bad patch ourselves after COVID. We can't give you a raise. How will this negotiation proceed?
Get any incentive which can be promised from the boss.
Yeah, you can look at overtime, you can look at so many other things. Yes.
Yes.
But question is, the man doesn't get a raise in salary. He's looking for a raise in salary. But what if the employee had gone to the market and found out, or gone on the newspaper and found out for similar qualifications, what are other firms or other companies offering, and had really gone for the interview and had that job offer in his pocket. Now look at the scenario. The man goes back to the employer and says, look, I want a raise in salary. And the boss says, sorry, son, we can't give you a raise. He says, look, boss, I went to so-and-so company and they are willing to give me, I mean, let's say he was asking for 25,000 raise and they are willing to give me 20,000 raise or 15,000 raise. What will the boss do? If he really wants the employee, he'll give him a raise.
Yeah.
And if he does not give him a raise, the employee has an alternative, which is he will get 15,000 more if he goes and joins somewhere else. But as I said, it comes at a cost. You have to start all over again. But they say your power to negotiate is not because you are stronger, you are a boss, or you have more money, but it comes from your partner. The better your partner, the better you have a power to negotiate. Look at a carpet seller in a cottage emporium. A foreigner with loads of money comes and wants to buy the carpet. The carpet is really worth 20,000 rupees and the salesman quotes a lakh of rupees. The man likes it and buys it for a lakh of rupees because he has money. Who had a better negotiating power? The man with lots of money or the man who had more experience about the market?
The man with more experience.
The carpet seller.
The carpet seller. He sold 20,000 worth carpet for a lakh of rupees. Look at his negotiating power. Because he has the knowledge of the market, not because the man with more money had the power to negotiate. No. Now, all these things that I've told you, let me now put them in a perspective. Let's go to the next slide. Now, these are various terms. Just take a bird's eye view, then we'll deal with them. Best alternative to a negotiated settlement, that is BATNA. Worst alternative to a negotiated settlement, that is VATNA. Zone of possible agreement, that is, we say ZOPA, the short form. Walkaway price or point, something which is my bottom line, where I'll walk away from the negotiation. That again is a very, very important principle to keep in mind. Once both parties identify their BATNA and VATNA, mediator would be able to recognize the ZOPA, that is the zone of possible agreement. Where the zone of possible agreement is, between which zone the settlement can happen. So where do I have to look? We'll deal with each one of them by examples. Let's see the next one. So the best alternative, if you can't achieve what you want in negotiation, is, as I said, not on the table. It is away from the table. I don't need the other person. If I have a better alternative, I don't need my boss to negotiate. I can go and take that job if my boss is not willing to give it. The better your partner, the greater is your power to negotiate. You can make the other person think. If I knew the market rates, if this man had gone around and done the homework that I told you, preparation. If you had done your preparation to buy the fridge, you would know which fridge to ask for. You would know what discounts are being offered. You would know when the discounts are given. You will know whether can you get an extended warranty, whether you can buy the same fridge in installments without paying any interest. So many alternatives are available if you prepare yourself and go. Knowing your partner, what does it do? It protects you from accepting unfavorable terms. The man bought the carpet for 1 lakh of rupees, which was really worth 20,000. If he had known his partner, if he had known what the others are selling, if he had gone and searched in the market, probably he would have got it for that much price, or maybe a little more. But he would have saved so much of money. So therefore, it will protect you from accepting unfavorable terms. And then the second part, it protects you from rejecting favorable terms. If something which is being offered to you is better than going to court, my third party alternative, should I not accept it? That's my test. So how will I know that? Unless I have prepared myself, unless I looked at my alternatives, unless I have actually seen what will I get ultimately in court. You see, sometimes people reject offers being made in especially matrimonial disputes, being made in in negotiation, because they have a grandiose feeling of I should get actually 2 crores, or another person I know who got a settlement, got 2 crores from the husband. But and versus what will you get in court? You never get these lump sum amounts in court. You will get a monthly maintenance. Alimony will get decided after 10 years or 20 years. The permanent alimony. And something which you are getting now versus what you will get in court. How do you know this, what you are getting is better than what you will get in court or after a few years? So if you had your partner, if you had prepared yourself with your partner, it will protect you from rejecting favorable terms. And the third, it helps you in exploring imaginative solutions. More and more ways you can find out how to reach your goal. They say your price in negotiation, it must satisfy your interests, which would be better than pursuing your partner. So if my partner is a raise of 15,000, negotiation must get me more than 15,000. So I must keep that price in picture. Price in my mind when I sit down to negotiate. Otherwise, the expression they use is, if you negotiate without preparing, it's like negotiating with your eyes closed. You really don't know where you will hit the target. Let's see the next one. Develop your partner. How do you develop your partner? List all possible actions if no agreement is reached in negotiation. If I don't get my raise, where will I go? Will I shift to another town where I can get more money? Whether I shift to another employer? Whether I shift to a, lesser, like instead of shifting from a place like Delhi, I shift to a place, where the living expenses are less. My travel expenses will be less. So maybe even if I get the same salary, I'm able to, comfortably live. All those options you must list them that if I am sitting in negotiation, if I don't get my deal. Acha, one more word that we use, let me tell you. Powerful negotiation happen if you know that you have you should know when to walk away. You know, sometimes we get so embroiled in our negotiation. When let's say we go to buy a car, the man tells you, like, you've been talking to the man. He says, look, I'll give you the dealer's discount. I'll give you, add-ons like mats and all for your car. I'll give you this, that, and the other. And you ultimately, or your children are forcing you, no, this car is a good car. While you have not actually done the other, you have not looked at your BATNA, you really not looked at your market price. But you feel guilty moving away. You have been, negotiating for so long. Or when your children are forcing you to go for this holiday or buy that particular car, that you forget your walk away. You should be in a position when you are not sure, tell that person, I'll come back again. You should know when to walk away, because otherwise you will get into a bad deal. Keeping the walkaway point in mind is the most important part when you sit down to negotiate. You should be able to tell the other side, I think it's not working. I need to relook at it. You should know how to get up and walk away. That's the most important part in negotiation. So let's look at the other now, the ones which we are seeing on the screen. So one was list possible actions if no agreement is reached. Improve those ideas and convert them into practical alternatives. You've seen in the newspaper ads like, for your qualification, this is what they're offering. Now, all those are in the realm of speculation. You need to convert them into practical alternatives by going there, getting an interview, and getting a job offer. Then only it is a BATNA. Sometimes, they say lawyers give you idea that you have a great case, you will win in court. And that leads to sometimes companies into financial ruin by going to court. Because you overestimate your BATNA. Going to court is a good alternative because lawyers give you that advice. You have a great case, you will win. And that has led a lot of companies into financial ruins. I remember the words. Daftari was a very, very, known as a very, very senior and a very, very, intelligent and a very good lawyer, practicing mostly in the Supreme Court. There was a matter going on under the Gambling Act. So when the matter started, the judges put to Daftari, Mr. Daftari, do you know the definition of gambling? He says, my lord, what we do here every day. Court is a gamble. Where will it go? How will it land up? You don't know. So don't overestimate your BATNA. Look at a practical way. Go and get it. Improve. Get a practical alternative first on the table. See how strong it is. And then sit down to negotiate. And then select the best alternative. Look at all your alternatives. Look at what is best for you. And then go for it. Let's see the next one.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So this, you are saying all this you have to do as a mediator, right? You have to work on your BATNA as a mediator.
No. You have to ask parties to do it.
Oh.
But if you don't know the principles, how will parties anyway have no idea of negotiating? They never prepare and come. They have no idea of parties who are sitting. See, this is also part of reality testing, BATNA. Sir, ma'am, have you looked at your alternatives? When the offers come from the other side and the party is sticking to his position. The question that you put to them is, sir, ma'am, have you considered your alternatives? If this is not acceptable to you, if this is not working for you, what is your alternative? He'll say, I'll go to court. Ma'am, have you tried to see as to what you will get in court? Have you actually really discussed it with that's reality testing. Have you discussed it with your lawyer? As to what are the judgments on this point? Maintenance, I told you example. By things she is entitled to 2/3 of the maintenance. While there is a mother also dependent on the person, he has a dependent mother. He has to take care of. How will that maintenance get divided? Now there are judgments on this particular point. Ma'am, have you considered it? Have you discussed this with your lawyer? What is being offered to you as to what you will ultimately get in court? When will you get that in court? When is a Bhatna? I'll come to that. But the question is, these are what Bhatna principles are, where you empower parties by doing reality testing. And this is a tool which you have to use. And see, sometimes, Sonu, you are negotiating yourself. You don't have to be a mediator yourself. As I said, you go to the market, you negotiate. You negotiate with your peer group. You negotiate which movie should we see, which holiday we should we have. Have we seen our budget? Have we discussed our expenses? Have we explored, instead of going to Mauritius, how much will it cost to go to Bhutan? Have you considered all this? Those are your partners. When you discuss when you're negotiating within the family, partner is your strong weapon. Most of us don't do that. In mediation, you ask parties to do it because they don't consider their alternatives when they are sitting on the negotiating table. They have not considered, they have not prepared themselves. Then select.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you say that the best negotiation is like when you know when to walk away. So who's walking away? The parties involved, one of the parties involved.
Yes.
Okay.
Parties must know what is the point
the
when they will walk
mediator.
away. Instead of getting, because of shame, because you've been working so long on it, so let me give in. No. Or my children are forcing me to buy this car. No. Let's look at the next one. Now, the Vatna, which is and usually Vatna is compared to going for litigation. What I am being offered on the table versus what I will get in court. The time being spent, the expenses in court, and ultimately my decree or my relief that I'll get from the court versus what I am given on the table. As I said, litigation shrinks the pie. If the pie is 100, 10 will be taken away by the lawyer. 4% is your court fees. So in the very beginning, your pie from 100 has become 86. Now that is what is left to be negotiated or shared. But if you sit across the table before you initiate litigation, what do? You save those 14%. So how do we talk about Bhatna? We tell parties, we don't tell parties you'll spend 10 years in court, you will waste 10 years in court. We don't tell them that you'll spend so much of money on lawyers. We don't tell them you'll spend so much of money on court fees. We tell them, this is what you will save if you settle. You will save on the court fees. You will save on the time. You will save on the trouble that you'll go through in court. All that can be saved in case if you put your best foot forward and get the best deal from negotiation. So this is how Bhatna is put to them, that you will save. That's positive way of putting Bhatna. Instead of saying you will lose so much, we tell them this is what you will gain if you do it now. Let's see the next. So the worst alternative, if you can't achieve what you want in negotiation, knowing your Vatna enables you to assess the advantage of the possible agreement. My 100 rupees division versus 86, which may go on diminishing with time and more lawyers' expenses and more other expenses in court. Let's see the next. So benefits of Vatna. Those are your options if negotiation fails. It increases your negotiating power. We talked about that. And it clarifies your reservation point, your walkaway point, where underneath this I'll walk away, or what are the conditions in which I'll walk away. As I said, accepting unfavorable terms or rejecting favorable terms. You should know which is the point that you want to walk away. Next. Yes, Gandha. You want to deal with this, Gandha?
Yes. I'm not able to see it properly on the screen.
It's actually very hazy.
Yes. So I'll see it on my thing.
It's very hazy actually.
But Nalini?
I'm sorry, if you want me to reshare it.
No, it's fine. It's
You
fine.
can stop your video probably.
That's better now.
No, yeah, it's better. It's better.
Yeah, it's better. It's better.
I'm sorry, must be a network issue. I'm sorry.
So basically, this is how Zopa looks when you look at it. It's the seller's settlement range, buyer's settlement range, and the alternatives that they have, which are their walkaway points. So their seller's worst point price is the price at which the seller will walk away, and the buyer's worst price is at the price at which the buyer will walk away. So after a particular point, the buyer will not be interested in the transaction. After a particular point, below a particular point, the seller will not be interested. Now, when you speak to the parties, you will be in a position to understand where is the range of settlement available. Because now BATNA is something that is always explored in private sessions. Remember that. If you explore it in a joint session, parties may not be ready to share. They will be uncomfortable. You may not get the answers that you're looking for. But when you ask them the same questions in a private session, they will be able to indicate to you what is it that they're looking for, their interests, their walkaway points, their desired price, which will be the highest, what they're looking for. Price here, of course, we are looking at it from a more monetary perspective, but there could be other criteria that also could fall under Zopa. Other aspects. But primarily to understand, it's easier to understand when we look at a price point, because after some point in the negotiation, you come to a price point. So this is how it works. And there's another slide. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, the next one. So this is where it is, where the position of the party, the first position that the party takes is the preferred outcome that they have. And their BATNAs will lead you to a point where it will be a Zopa. A more simple example is on the next slide. So if you see this example, a friend is selling their iPhone and they have indicated a price between 60 and 75 that they are ready to sell the phone for. 75 may be the market price of a new phone, and 60 is the least that they are ready to sell it for. So you know that range, and you know that they will walk away if it is anything below 60. You talk to the other party in the in a private session and they tell you, I want the phone as cheap as possible, but nothing over, I'm not paying a rupee over 62,000. So what do you get there? You get a range that they will be willing to pay up to 62,000 for this phone. And then you identify that if there is a range between 60 and 62, that there is a possibility of a settlement. That is your ZOPA, to simplify it as much as possible. Now, in negotiation between two parties, this is very difficult to find out because it's more like, okay, it's like how we bargain in the market. But when you're a mediator, you can find out because parties are more forthcoming to you. And in a private session, you get the range and then you can come to the ZOPA.
That framework that you did earlier, the negotiation, I didn't get it actually.
Which one? The one previous to
The
this?
first, yeah, the first, that Matna negotiation framework.
Okay, just go back to that. This
Yeah,
one?
that one. Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at it better. There is a settlement now. If you see the phone,
Huh.
so the seller's price for the phone is coming in this range, seller's settlement range. And if he doesn't get 60,000 for his phone, what are his buttoners? He may go to somebody else and sell it. He may prefer to keep the phone. He may exchange it and give it to his wife and sell her phone because this phone has more value. So those are buttoners. Below that range are the buttoners. Now, how good those buttoners are, that depends. That basically leads us to understand whether he will settle or not. If his only settlement, if his only buttoner is, oh, if I don't sell the phone, I will keep it in the cupboard, we know that he is not going to get a better price next year in any case. So that's a weak buttoner, and that basically makes him, puts him in a spot where he might have to go below that. But supposing his child is waiting for a phone, and the other new phone that he's planning to get for his child is, say, 65,000. And he feels that if I don't sell it at this price, I can give this phone to the child. So it's a good enough option not to sell the phone. So how powerful your buttoner is, that decides your, how much negotiation power you have in the transaction. Same applies to the buyer. Buyer has a settlement range from 0 to 60,000. I will buy a phone. What are my other options? I know of a phone, one generation back, I can get it 30,000. Only thing, it doesn't have the kind of camera I'm looking for. Or its battery runs faster, drains faster. So those are my problems, but I have an option. Now, how much that option matters to the buyer, that depends on how strong his negotiation power is. Really doesn't care about the generation of the phone, but more about the price, then he will stick to his position. But if he feels, okay, a couple of thousand more and I get this generation, I might as well pick it up. So that decides, so that is the negotiation power. And that is how negotiation power is related to your buttoner. And we say, look at your buttoner, look at your buttoner. So what's your worst alternative? Worst alternative is that you keep your phone at home. You don't get it. Or the worst alternative for the buyer is you buy a new phone at 72,000 from the market. So then we know what is my negotiation power. So as a mediator, you use shuttle diplomacy, you go to private sessions, joint sessions, and your idea is to find this entire map of where do we stand, what are the options the parties have, what is their Batna, what is their Vatna, and you identify their Zopa so that you can help them find a solution that works for both of them. And you do realize why, as a mediator, it's easier for us to identify Zopa. In a negotiation, that will take a lot of back and forth to come to that point, and you're still kind of guessing.
Let me just take
Add.
them, in a real test of like a doctor-patient dispute. Let's say a doctor gets sued and you have an insurance. You go to your insurance to find out in this kind of situation how much they are willing to pay. So you have a point now, right? So it is when you're negotiating, you know, if this is what this is what the man wants. This is how far I'm willing to go because that's what my insurance company will pay. So that is the zone of possible agreement where you know that what is my walkaway point? Or you may think, look, if this matter goes to court and you've done your reality testing, we'll just come to that how much it will cost. You talk to a lawyer, litigation will cost how much, etc., etc. So, you have an idea of how much it will cost if the matter goes to court. So you may say, fine, this much plus this I can pay. This is my limit. Similarly, if the patient has gone and found out as to what he will get in terms of damages in court versus what is being offered here, he knows what is the zone within which he needs to negotiate. This is what you need to find out. And that is where reality testing will help you. We'll come to that. Just see, Ganda, are we through with this? Mrinalini?
Mrinalini, please go ahead. Yeah, next slide. Next. Yes. One second. Go one behind.
Go back.
Go back. Yeah, wait here. So how do you identify your Batna? You list your alternatives to your current negotiation. Okay, now one of the things that we have to understand, how do you do this? Ideally, in a negotiation, each party needs to come prepared with their Batna. That's an ideal situation. In most cases, parties don't. So you take parties in a private session and you ask them questions to identify their Batna. Of course, don't use the word Batna, but use words by which you say, okay, what is the option? What do you think will happen if you go to court? Okay, and what will you do if this happens? What will you do during the time that the case is pending in the court? Do you really want to go to court? Questions like these. Have you thought of, do you have any other options? When you ask these questions, particularly open-ended questions, parties will tell you what their plan is, and there will be some plans. They would have thought it through. So what you do is you ask them to list those alternatives to the current negotiation. Then each of those options you evaluate. For example, they say, oh, if we don't get what we want here, we will go to court. Then you ask them, what will happen in court? How much time do you think it will take? What will be the costs involved? What will you do during this period? Questions such as these help them evaluate each of their alternatives, and you ask them these questions for each. Because it's not that they will say only court. They may say something else. you ask them those alternatives. What is the consequence of that alternative? After you've got an analysis of each alternative, select the alternative that would bring the most value to that party. Ask them to select it, of course, not from your perspective, from their perspective. Okay, you have these three options. Which one do you prefer and why? Many times, parties are so emotional about a certain issue, they don't see it from a very neutral, from a perspective or a very practical perspective. It's your job to ask them the questions so they see the practicality. And ask them to select what is it that they feel is the best option among the options that they have listed. That is the button. That is the best alternative. If that is the only alternative, that is the only alternative. If there are several alternatives, list them in the order of preference and the reasons. We, in fact, even use a whiteboard or a chart, paper chart to basically flip chart to basically list down these things and close the flip chart so that it remains confidential. And each party has their own, or a notepad where these things are listed and the parties see it in front of them when they are talking. Now calculate the lowest value deal that they are willing to accept, and this is your walkaway point. So that point where they have an offer from the other party, they're not willing to accept at a particular point, that's a point that they're going to walk away. And among the alternatives, what is the worst that can happen? That's your worst alternative to a negotiated agreement. And what now? Once you have this in place, party sees where they stand as far as the negotiation is concerned, understand their negotiation power. The mediator can also help in identifying the ZOPA. The ZOPA is confidential, is not to be disclosed to either of the parties until there is appropriate, until the appropriate time. It's for the mediator's understanding where it's going. Because eventually the parties need to negotiate and find the solution. Right? Next slide. Reality testing. Reality testing is basically a point in the matter where parties have reached a point where they are about to take a decision. They've decided their partners. But they're stuck at a point where they're saying, oh, I have a partner. And if I get this, it's fine. If not, I'm walking away. Next slide. So it's a technique of inviting a party to adjust his or her perception of the claim. So for example, I might say that if I don't get X amount of money as my compensation, I will go to court. At this time, the mediator needs to do what we call as a reality test with the party and ask them a set of questions which will guide, which will help them analyze their partner or that claim that they're taking, that position that they're taking, because of which they're not willing to compromise or go for a settlement. For example, I'm going to go to court. At that time, you analyze that with a lot of questions. Okay, what will be your claim in court? How much will you spend? What do you think will be the result? Have you taken a legal opinion? How much, what will you do during the pendency of this case? It's things like this. How do you think this will matter to your reputation? It's things like this that you ask, so that if the party has not thought it through, you help them to think it through. One of the jobs of the mediator is to aid in decision making. And we don't advise parties, we don't tell them that this is what we do, but we help them understand the case and help them, or rather aid them to decide what is right for them. Several times in a conflict, we are so engulfed in our perspective, how we see things, and our ego and our anger, and we are indignant about something that we don't want to look at things which are the perspectives. It's our job as mediators to bring in other perspectives, and that other perspective is called reality testing. We do this somewhere at a later stage. We don't do this right in the beginning. We don't go into a session that, what will happen if you go to court, you must settle here. No, we first go through those stages, and it's right in the end when we've come to the, when we've come to a point where we've identified Bhatnas, and we've come to a point where we have identified Zopa, and we feel that the parties are now either ready to settle or walk away, that we do reality testing. Not like several times in the case, or not like an advocacy of courts are bad, and not like that, but more of a specific decision-making aid that we do with the parties to test whether the claim or the perception of the claim that the party is making is accurate or not. Next slide. And we do not lose the spirit with which we are conducting the mediation. Even at this stage, we don't blame parties, we don't ridicule their decision, we don't tell them, oh, that's not right or wrong. We just ask them whether they have thought about various permutations and combinations of the consequences of the decision that they're about to take. And therefore, it's very important that whatever feelings they're coming to the table with are validated. Their choices are validated. They know the choice that they're making. It may seem ridiculous to you. It may seem not the best thing to you, but you must respect that it's their choice. But you must help them look at various perspectives of whether they've thought about everything or not. Have they missed any point? That's what we check. We don't question the validity of their choice. Right? Next slide.
And let me just tell them what kind of question will you put there? You tell them, I'm sure you have really thought about, you have put this, figure that you are now putting on the table. You must have really thought about that. It's very well put. I'm sure you would have done that exercise. Help me understand, how have you done this? See, like, for example, in a middle class family, they come and say, I want 2 crores because 2 crores, this is the amount that my father spent on my wedding. So if you smile or raise an eyebrow, you're asking for trouble. So your body language can give you away. So at that time, you tell them, look, I understand that you must have really thought about this, when you gave me this figure. If I have to go to the other side, help me understand, how have you arrived at this figure? So what will happen? That 2 crore will ultimately come down to 55 lakhs. When they start telling you, well, we had this wedding in this so-and-so community hall, there were 400 guests. How much did each, plate cost? Get into that nitty-gritties of what was exchanged, what are the items of, items given at the time of wedding. That figure will come down. this is how, when you don't question their decision, but you ask them, I'm sure you've done this exercise, but help me understand how. Why do you come to this figure? So that's the way you validate their position that they have taken. Don't ridicule that. Don't tell them by smiling that, they're telling a ridiculous figure, but make them do the reality test. Tell them by asking why. They will themselves scale down. It helps them to move from that position. Yes, Kanda. So let me give you a few partner questions. Ganda has already told you. How do you ask these partner questions in reality testing? First, if we don't get an agreement today, what is your best case scenario? If we don't get a decision or we don't get an agreement, what is your best case scenario? What's the worst thing that might happen if we don't get this today? Whatever we are talking about, if we don't get this, what is the worst that can happen? How much do you think, the next question, your counsel projects it will cost in litigation? See, people say litigation costs, but you don't get into the, paisa and rupee. Ask them, did you discuss with your counsel as to how much money or cost will be there in litigation? How much of your own time you will be spending on this case away from your business? How much of your time will you be spending in case if this matter goes to court? How much time will you spend on the business away from your business? Do you expect that will decrease or increase if we fail to end it today? On this particular dispute, you are spending time away from business. So do you think if you go to court, will that increase or decrease? Then do your other customers and competitors and vendors know that you have this lawsuit going on? What impact do you think it will have on your goodwill and your business reputation if it goes to trial? Now, these are very, very difficult questions. What impact do you think it will have on your goodwill and your business reputation if this goes to trial? So all these questions are actually testing Bhatna and Vatna. These are the Bhatna testing questions. But you should know how to put them. They should look like curious questions, not cross-examination questions. Because when we deal with that, what are the risks involved when you do reality testing? We'll just deal with that. Yes, Ganda, anything? Yeah.
So what are the risks involved? Be careful that at no point during the case should you feel, should the parties perceive that you are being partial towards the other party, or you're pushing the agenda of another party. And sometimes during reality testing, that can be the understanding that parties may have. Parties may feel that they are being coerced, they are being forced. They may viewed as indirect and implied evaluation of claim or defense. So basically, what we said previously, that start with the thing that I understand that you've thought about this very well. When you do that, you validate their choice. And they should not view that when you're questioning that, you're questioning their choice. And that they feel that you have an agenda that you are pushing. Because that compromises your neutrality. And one of the most important things that we need to maintain during the process is neutrality and the trust that parties have on you. That you are completely neutral, you understand, and you will see this in the way they behave with you. They will ask you, what should I do? But for that to change, it may take just one sentence. So be very careful when you do that. Watch the body language, watch the reaction, watch the how they are, if their eyes just suddenly you see that expression of shock or surprise. Stop and analyze that. And you may want to rephrase the questions that you're asking. Watch your tone. Challenge expectations formed by legal counsel versus reality testing. Now, you know that many times they will come with advice from their counsels. They may have seen precedents. They may have been shown precedents that, such a case, you will get this much damages. This is what happened in so and so case. And when you give them, and this is very common, when you do a reality testing, their legal counsel may defend that position very strongly. That we have a very strong case, we will win. Be prepared for that, expect that, but you have to tactically handle it with other questions, such as, I understand that you have a strong case, you've shown me the precedent, or you've really investigated this well, but do you, have you thought about how long it will take? And how much it will cost you? And what will happen during this time? Have you thought about that? So questions like that help them look at perspectives that even if they eventually win, what is the impact on the transaction at the end of it? There may be a perception against fairness and neutrality, as I mentioned. It's very annoying if you don't want to settle and the mediator is very enthusiastic about settling. Okay, so be aware of where the parties are, whether they're really interested in the offer on the table, or it's you who feels that the offer is good. Be mindful of that. And it's not an opportunity for your evaluation. It's to help them evaluate it. So it's not about you giving your opinion that I think this matter will, if it goes to court, this is what is going to be the ultimate outcome. It's for you to ask them to take a legal opinion if required, to analyze what it will cost them, what will be the impact of it on other things in life. Because by that time, you will have enough information to know how that decision is going to impact certain things in his life. Just bringing them in perspective and helping them see the picture, the bigger picture. Many times when you know that you have a strong case, you tend to see it from that perspective. I will win it in court. You zoom back and see the larger picture and you realize it may not be worth it. That's the picture that you must help them see. Not give your evaluation that no, you will not win the case. Because that's not, that may not sit well with the parties and may appear that you have lost your neutrality there.
Ganda, can I just
Yes.
add here a practical way of doing it? You see, as Ganda said, mostly these perceptions and expectations are built because of legal advice, because they have had a discussion. So when you are talking about this, in front of the lawyer, what will the lawyer look like? The lawyer will look like that he's foolish. Correct? So that is the problem that you face. And it will make the lawyer look foolish. And secondly, the client will start judging or questioning the judgment of the counsel. So mostly reality testing is done in the private session. And what do I do? I'll tell them when I'm putting these kind of questions, what do you think you will get in court? I'm not evaluating. But when I'm talking about Vatna, he's telling them, you know, when I sit in the private session, I tell them, look, I'm acting as a devil's advocate. I'll go and do this same exercise with the other side. Not that I'm trying to tell you have a bad case. I just want you to think about it because I'm going to tell the other side also the same. So therefore, as Ganda says, it should not look like as if you are coercing or that you have lost your neutrality. Because it's very easy. Therefore, I said, these are the risks involved. How you put these questions will be very important. Sometimes parties will think you're putting your own agenda. You're putting your own judgment, pushing your own judgment. How you evaluate the whole situation. And therefore, you can avoid that risk by saying, look, I'm acting as a devil's advocate. I'm going to go and do the same exercise with the other side. Yes, Kanda.
Next slide, please. Another tool that we use is called the SWOT analysis. Once again, this is used separately in private sessions with individual parties. Many of you must be knowing these tools. So what we do is we try to find out where we stand if this matter proceeds to court. Or if we try to analyze our various alternatives through this model. And what does this model say? It refers to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths are internal, and so are weaknesses. So what is it in our case that we are aware about, which we know, which is internal to us? That is something that it's in our control. So, for example, if I have resources such as money or manpower, or I have, I have a legal counsel who has given me a strategy in terms of the case analysis and precedents that help me, those are my strengths. My weaknesses are what I know. I will not be able to afford a legal counsel. If I waste so much time in court, I will, my health will not support me. I may not have the strength to actually run this case physically, going to court, attending, finding witnesses. It's a lot of work. I don't think I have the capability or the capacity to be able to handle that. That is a weakness that is known only to me. I may not disclose it to the other party, and therefore this needs to be done in a private session. But each of these will have a huge impact on my bhatna, on my negotiation power. And therefore, if I have not thought about it, it's important for me. It's important that the mediator helps me think about this. Another aspect that we look at is opportunities. A change in the law, or a grant given by the government, or a new, a new hospital coming in the vicinity, which will help me get better service, or something that will benefit me, but it's not in my control. But I'm aware that in the near future, something is going to happen, which will be an opportunity for me. That is opportunity. And threats are the same, but which would be not beneficial to me. Competition. Not in my control, but it's there. A change of law, which would make it stricter for me to enforce what I'm claiming. These are threats which are external, but knowledge of them has an impact on my negotiation power. When we do it systematically with the party, we make them go through these things. They see the case very differently from the way they were seeing it from an emotional perspective. Take a typical case of doctor-patient negligence, a claim of negligence. If the doctor knows that a protocol was followed as per the book, it's recorded in your notes, in your patient notes. There has been consent that is taken as per the, criteria that you need to take it. Those are all your strengths because your paperwork is in order. But in case something like that is missing, that's a weakness. The other party may not even know about it. But you know about it. And that impacts your negotiation power. You know that if this matter goes to court and I have to produce these documents, that's not going to be good for me. Right? Similarly, what are the opportunities for me? Opportunity is if I know that the only hospital that's providing the treatment that the patient needs is mine. There's nothing else outside, and there is not going to be no other professional who will be able to provide that, and the patient needs that. So that long-term relationship is critical for the patient. That's an opportunity. At the same time, if that service is available by a competition, and you know that the patient can go and get it there, that's a threat. And that's beyond your control. So this is what an analysis of your case from the internal factors and the external factors helps you understand your own negotiation power. Parties may not be equipped to do this themselves. So it's the mediator's job to ask them the question. In your mind, you're finding out the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, putting them in these boxes for you to be able to analyze where do we stand. Where your strengths are higher and weakness is lower, your negotiation power is higher. When your opportunities are higher and threats are lower, your negotiation power is higher. And when your weaknesses are more than your strengths, or they're so glaring that you know that it's a problem, your negotiation power is weaker. And it's again weaker when your threats are higher. So we've spoken about negotiation power and how important it is for us to know where we stand so that we understand how to, what offers to accept, what not to accept, and where we stand as far as our BATNA and BATNA is concerned. So this is another tool that helps us analyze the case with the parties. Next slide. Framing of issues. So mediation, as you have seen till now, is a structured process. There is a process and there's a structure to it. You start with opening statements, introductions. There's a purpose for that stage. Then you go to the stage of communication. And over there, your idea or your purpose is to get as much information as possible and get the complete picture. The tools that were shared at that time were relating primarily to asking different types of questions, listening, and creating a safe space for people to be able to express themselves and you getting the entire picture. When you move to negotiation, you've already got information. Now your idea is to bring that information in such an order that you understand from both parties where they stand as far as their negotiation strategy, their Vatna, their possible range of settlement is concerned. That's what you're exploring. And when you're exploring that, it's best to explore it in a point-wise manner and not haphazard. For example, there is a case, we'll take the builder case, for example. In the builder case, there is a delay in possession. Parties are asking for possession. There is a compensation that the builder is offering. And the parties are claiming that they want to proceed against the builder and they have certain demands. Now, in this case, if you start looking at a solution right in the beginning or before actually organizing it, there is a possibility of getting into an impasse. If you go step by step, where you identify positions and interests, people problems, substantive problems, and classify matters into issues and categories of severity, you will be able to help the parties negotiate better. The idea of framing issues is to only bring structure to the process. That case was very simple, where the issue was primarily of possession, and then the interests were a little deeper in terms of admission of the child. But if you focus on just possession in the beginning, you would be able to come down to the fact that possession is only a position and the interest is much deeper. But if you mix up the two and say, okay, possession is delayed, how much compensation can you give? If you can't give possession, give compensation, that is getting stuck at the position without exploring the entire issue of the possession properly. But when you start differentiating that possession is one issue and compensation is second, you will be able to go deeper into every issue to be able to reach to interests. So the idea is, when you understand the entire facts, you try and divide them into issues. So what are issues? Issues are things that parties are not agreeing on. So there is one, there's a delay in possession. Both parties say there's a delay in possession. But one party says you are to be blamed and you need to give it to me immediately. And the other party says, I understand that I am delayed, but I am not in a position to give it to you. So there's a contentious issue, and the issue is about possession. Okay. Draft a way to state each issue in a mutually acceptable manner. Both parties agree that there is a delay in possession. Nobody is contending that. So if you say that there is a delay in possession, and how do you find a solution to that? Both parties will say, okay, yes, there is a delay in possession. And that's a problem. It's a common problem. But if you say there is a delayed possession because the builder doesn't want to give it, a builder is irresponsible, that is mixing people problem with substantial problem, and the builder is going to have an issue with it. So when you frame it, you remove the people problem, you go down to the substantial problem of delay, and that becomes an issue. You explore the issue. When you explore the issue, you'll come down to the primary interests of both parties, and you may see a solution there. Identify and be aware of triggers and be prepared on how those will be addressed. So the triggers here would be literally paying compensation for the delay. The parents would get affected, the buyers would get affected if you say, tell them, okay, this is the compensation I'm paying you. I cannot give you possession. That would be a trigger because the interest is something completely different. The builder will get triggered when you say that you are a bad builder, because he values his reputation very highly. He is almost taking an ethical stand when he is not giving possession, because he doesn't want to do something else. So that will affect his reputation, the way he's perceived. He will get triggered. So you have to identify those and see that when you are dealing with those issues, you don't, you handle them diplomatically and don't focus on those triggers. And with the help of the issues, you build what we call as an agenda. Next slide. Yes, Dr. Sunnu.
Yeah. How do you define a substantive problem? What exactly is it?
Substantive problem is which is different. So now see, when you this builder problem, for example, the substantive problem is the delay. Okay, there is a delay, it's an admitted fact, and that's the substantive problem. Okay, and the impact of that is something that we study. But the fact that the builder has caused the delay is a blame, and it points to the person. So when we, as mediators, we have to look at the problem as when the claim will come, it is the builder has not given the possession. So it will be a blame. It will be a mixture of a people and a substantive problem. In that, there will be allegations such as the builder is a cheat. He has basically not done his part of the agreement. The reasons for that may be different, but there will be blame attached. And every time a problem will come to you, for example, a doctor is negligent because the patient has got this complication. The fact that there is a complication is a substantive problem. It's a fact. But the assumption that it's because of the doctor's negligence is a people problem. It's coming from an emotion against the doctor for various reasons. It could be a perception around doctors. It could be some impression that I got when I interacted with the doctors. It could be because my lawyer said so. Whatever are my reasons, they are people problems. That is a problem of my perception of the problem. But the substantive problem is the fact that there is a complication. Or an
The negligence per se is not the substantive problem.
No, the impact of the negligence is.
Okay.
Because negligence is an assumption till it is proved. Correct. And it could be because of several layers of perception that the person who's making that blame is. Of course, in some cases it may be true. But our job is to analyze it from that point of view, that let's remove the problem of the perception of the people and about the people and look at what is factually available to us. Factually, what is available? The reports. Whether there's negligence or not is an issue, not something that we actually get into in mediation, but we try to diffuse the perceptions and go to the facts. Okay, so that is what is the difference between people problem and substantial. JP?
Well, now that the issues are on the table, you need to do agenda building. And agenda building is not about finding solutions, but setting the issues in seriatim, and especially, while building agenda, what you look at is what are the topics or issues we need to work on first, and what should happen later, like any agenda in a meeting. So you set those issues or topics which we need to work on. And ordinarily they say, when you start working, you should be the least problematic issue, where you feel the chances of success are more. That should be taken up first, because that builds the trust of the parties in the process. Okay, we've solved this. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So agenda setting is very, very important as to which is the issue which we'll talk about first, which is the issue we'll talk about later. We can take help of the parties. Sometimes parties will tell you, okay, we need to talk about this first. So set the agenda. That is setting the topics, not what you're looking at as the ultimate solution. The topics or the issue should be in a non-judgmental language. See, what should be, how this partnership issue should be dealt with. Not that we need to look at divorce or reconciliation or marriage. The moment you say we have to look at divorce and the person who has filed that, it seems as if we are now looking at what the person who had filed that petition. So it looks like that's why the next topic, it says it should be actually, more look like our problem. So we need to look at the issue can be like how you put the topic is, we need to look at what is to be done about these assets. We need to, so that's a joint, we need to look at the custody issue of the child. Not that it should go to the mother or it should go to the father. So they should be in the neutral form. And once you frame those, and it should look like as if it's a mutual problem that parties need to look at. We need to look at. Let's look at, so let's look at the partnership assets issue. Let's look at the marriage issue. Let's look at the custody issue. Let's look at the maintenance issue. So it should look as if it's a mutual, we need to look at as if it's a problem which parties need to work together on the problem, mutual problem. So it can be both legal and non-legal items. If we have to work on that. Once you set the agenda, as I said, it provides momentum to take the discussion forward. We need to work on this first, then we'll work on this, then we'll work on this. So then the parties know how the whole discussion will move. It gives that momentum. Parties get mentally prepared. What all we need to talk about and how we will go about it. It also focuses, of course, then the focus is now there. You put those agenda items, you have put those issues and topics on as I said, on the whiteboard, or you've written them down, or you have summarized them for the parties, saying, look, now this is how we'll be working on these issues. So focus, it brings in the focus on what we need to talk about. It also then lays down a structure and tracking. Where have we reached? How we are going? And as we go along, as I said, it will also create a record of accomplishment. We have already agreed on this issue. We have already settled this particular topic. That helps parties to move on. Okay, we've done so much. Let's move on. Let's look at the other issues too. Therefore, agenda setting is important. They say you should have topics, you should have subtopics. We need to look at the marriage issues. Marriage issues can be maintenance. Marriage issues can be, visitation of the child. When we talk of the child issues. So therefore, you can break the topic into subtopics, because then the concentration of focus is more. clarity is there in the party's mind as to what we need to talk about. Instead of talking about a wholesale everything, whatever we are discussing, that discussion will go nowhere. If you start discussing the whole problem as a one unit, you will reach nowhere. So therefore, you need to give a direction, and the only way you can give a direction is exactly like, agenda setting is like what you do in a meeting. You fix your issues, you fix your topics, and then deal with each one of them. Let's see the next one. Generate options. We talked about brainstorming. It's a group activity technique to generate ideas. Make everyone sit together and ask, what next? How do you think we'll be able to resolve this? And never ridicule an idea. Do's are capture everything, whatever is said, put it on the table. And correct wild ideas. Some things which according to you look impossible, put them down. As I said, you don't know what parties may really want, how the parties will be really looking at. Ask clarifying questions. At the stage when options are being generated, how will it work? Do you think it will work? These are questions at that stage are not to be asked at all. But you can clarify as to what next. If this is how we have this option, is there something else that you can think of? How can you make it better? We don't evaluate them. We do not force an order of participation, how and which one to take up first, or who will start, or who will think about it, or who will talk about it. And of course, as I said, avoid judgment or analysis, whether it will work or not work. Because judging will create, it will impede creativity. You will not be able to, because the moment you start doing rational thinking, a woman has asked for 2 crores and you say, look, it's a middle class, the other side will not be able to afford it. You don't know what will happen, how the matter will span. Reality testing questions will reduce that. So how it will go that is not the stage at the time of generation of options. Have everything on the table. Next. Then evaluate the options generated. After you have all the options on the table, then start working one by one. Will this work? Why will this not work? Yes, Gandha?
Yeah. Next slide. Negotiating power. We've discussed this before, but there are 3 types of power that we get while negotiating. One is the positional power. Second is the personal power. And the third is the contextual or dependent, partner-dependent power. So we have a power because of the position that we hold. For example, the CEO of a company, or a police officer, or a minister, or a person holding a government job will come with their own power, and that sometimes is intimidating when you're sitting with a person with that kind of power across the table and you don't hold a similar position. It might be intimidating. So that is called legitimate power, which comes through a position. Remember, with legitimate power is based on a position that you're appointed, and that stays only till that position is with you. So if you resign from the position of a CEO, you don't have that power anymore. So it's only till you are in that position. And that position, that power can be either coercive or rewarding. So it could be threatening to you, or having somebody with that kind of power in the room could also be rewarding to you. For example, if you are negotiating, and you are a lady, and there's a police officer who's in the in your team, and you know that you have certain protections under the law, you might find that presence of that officer, maybe your brother or whoever it is, with that position, you might find it rewarding. But the other side may find it coercive. So that's how positional power works. Personal power comes from expertise. A lawyer, a doctor comes with their own set of expertise, knowledge that is personal to them, irrespective of the positions they hold, because of the educational background, because of that expertise that they hold or experience they hold, they have a certain personal power. This does not change because it's not endowed upon you. It's something that's very intrinsic to you. It's something you've earned. It can't be taken away from you. And there's referent power. Referent power basically comes because of a certain achievement that you have. For example, you are an extremely senior medical professional who has earned respect over time. That respect stays with you irrespective of whether you're working, not working, or anything. It's just what you've earned in your lifetime. A certain amount of respect from society, and with that comes a certain amount of negotiating power that you bring along. And the third and the most important for us as mediators, because the other powers we have limited amount of control over. And in a mediation, we have to work around these powers. But when it comes to BATNA, understanding the actual power in the offers and the alternatives that people have, that is also a tremendous power that you bring to the table. And having knowledge of that position is important when it comes to where you stand in the entire negotiation. So being aware of these, the kind of power you bring to the table as a mediator and as a party, and as a mediator, being aware of what could be coercive to one of the parties and how you can bring balance for that person to be able to negotiate authentically and to actually be able to do their best in that negotiation is also something that the mediator may need to do. For example, where there is threat of violence or there's threat of power, you might want to take more joint sessions to empower the party to understand their position and focus on their BATNA rather than just the physical presence of parties in the room. Next, please. And then we have offers which are exchanged at the time of negotiation. Offers are basically settlement proposals that are offered, given. And we must ensure that offers are not vague. And they're not, they meet certain specific criteria. One is they are, and we call them, again, an acronym that we use, SMART, which means that the offer is specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time-bound. So analyzing the offer that you have on the basis of this criteria to make it a SMART offer is important. Why? Because that offer will then be executable and enforceable. If it doesn't have these criteria, it will not be enforceable. JP, you want to add something?
This will be relevant, Ganda, even at the time of settlement writing.
Yes.
You know, when you are looking at that settlement which is to be written finally, and which is again an art. settlement writing is not like writing any agreement or a contract. And so therefore, even at that stage, you'll be looking at that. So I'm sure we can do a revision at that time.
Yes, yes. And that's it for today.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.